Alrighty, everyone. Welcome. Today we're going to be doing biostats and shout out to Suspicious Bunch and Pharma Turtles for setting this up. If you're new, hold your questions until the end. Genesis Autumn Fam, welcome. And I'd be happy to answer them. The resources that I use are RxPrep and Pass Naplex Now. Both are phenomenal resources. Bella, Wad, Sapphire, welcome. And if you feel that one topic in one of these is not preparing you well, or someone gives you feedback that another resource prepares you better, make sure you do the research and augment your resources. Melissa, Vicky, KSC, Pacific Swells, welcome. So, we will do some light learning. By no means are any of my presentations comprehensive. If you feel like you need more help, remember that I do one-on-one Naplex tutoring. I'm ChicagoDLSinc, as well as group sessions in both the morning and the afternoon. Tomorrow, you should all be getting a notification about upcoming group sessions. I've come up with a schedule and a structure for you. Tara, Mercedes, Nikki, welcome. So, if I can just make sure you can hear me. All right, very good. Excellent. So we'll start with measures of central tendency. Actually, I see quite a few newcomers. Remember, if we're going over something and it's not familiar to you, excuse me, seasonal allergies are kicking my butt still. Make a note and go back and review it. It's okay if you don't know it now. You want to be able to fill those gaps in your knowledge base before you get to the actual Naplex. So if you make any mistakes on the practice questions, it's all right. President, welcome. And if there's something that you're unfamiliar with or not sure about, make sure you make a note and review it either today or later tomorrow. That'll help you with retention. So let's go with measures of central tendency. And I have a mean, which is the average of all the numbers in the data. And what you're going to do is add them all together and divide by however many numbers there are. This is most commonly used and it's good unless there are extreme outliers. So if you have a bunch of numbers that are close to each other and you have one that's 50 higher or 100 lower, then mean is not going to be your best choice. Median is going to be the middle value. It's used in ordinal data, which we'll get into the different types. As you can see, we have 10, 20, 30, 40, and I have bolded the 30 because it's the middle value. Mode is going to be the number that occurs the most frequently. Here we have 1, 3, 5, 5, 5, 7, and 9, and I have bolded the 5. Now remember with mode, the numbers don't have to have a distribution like I've written. It was just easy on the keyboard to do that. So if you have 11, 50, 22, 61, and 62, and 75 three times, the mode can be 75. Range is going to be the difference between the highest and the lowest number. It's also known as the interval. And then variance is going to be the measure of data distribution or spread, along with the standard deviation or SD, which is the square root of the variance. To the right, you'll see a picture. X with a bar over it's going to be the middle of this data. This is known as the bell curve. And the 0 or the O with the line is sigma. Correct me if I'm wrong. But that represents standard deviation. And so the symbol by itself is going to be 1 standard deviation, 2, and then 3. And remember that standard deviation represents that if we take all the data that we have and we graph it, then and we divide up that data, that's going to be Depending on the percentage, that's going to be how the data is spread out. So in the first standard deviation, it should be the majority, this 68%. The second standard deviation is going to be 27%, and then the last is going to be 5%. Bella, can everyone see the slides? I just went through a whole slide. I didn't ask. Good. Bella, if you refresh your Discord, it may show up. That may help. Same with Mercedes. All right. So let's continue. The next slide says drug research and development. And we're going to have four different phases of trials. Phase 1 trials determine the toxicity profile in humans of the drug being studied. We administer a single conservative dose to a small number of healthy volunteers, and then we observe the effects increasing in size, and the number of daily doses are monitored until adverse effects develop. Cost of illness and treatment studies are also done. Next, we have phase 2 trials. We have a limited number of patients with a target condition without comorbidities are preferred. And then effects are compared to placebo and existing treatments. If you have any experience with experimental therapy or you have a family member that may have been uh, a patient of orphan disease or cancer and they have to be evaluated and tested for an experimental trial, a lot of them, unfortunately, are not candidates due to it being a phase 2 trial. So that's some clinical correlation for you. The next point is phase 3. I left off a Roman numeral 1. I'll edit that. Phase 3 trials are larger numbers of target patients given the new drug, and this helps to increase the power of the phase 2 trial, and we'll discuss power also. And it identifies any rare reactions. As you know, everyone is different. Everyone reacts to medications differently. And so the more patients that you can trial the actual medication on, the better. Phase 4 trials are what we call the post-marketing phase, and this is after the drug has been released to the general public and we receive more feedback on adverse effects. If you've ever looked at an adverse effect profile, it may say like 25% nausea, vomiting, and it may go all the way down to 1% or 0 to 1%. Pinky finger swells up randomly. So all of these are important. All right, the third slide. Bella, are you able to see now? We're on biostatistics continued. And Mercedes, have you been able to see? Okay. The lectures will be uploaded and you can rewatch it in the resource section. And I think they're also uploaded to YouTube. So incidence, number of new patients, developing the illness in given time period divided by total at-risk individuals. So let's say, for example, you have high cholesterol, which can lead to coronary artery disease, which can lead to myocardial infarction or heart attack. So if 100 people have coronary artery disease and 10 patients um, suffer from a heart attack, that's going to be the incidence, the 10 out of 100. Prevalence is going to be patients that have the illness in the total population. There are two kinds of prevalence. One is called point, which is if we pick right now to see, and period is going to be a time period. So we can say in the year 2020, how many people had COVID? We can see the prevalence of that. In 2021, how many people suffered hepatitis B? That would be a period prevalence or have been diagnosed with hepatitis B. Next, we have case reports or case series. These report rare occurrences, abnormalities, and side effects. Case report is going to be singular and series are going to be plural. Survival analysis, timing of treatment effects and this tells us, hey, what is the duration of onset and what is the maximal effect? A great example would be SSRIs. If you can put into the chat, how long do we counsel a patient that to notice it that take once you start taking an SSRI, how long is it going to take you to notice a difference, and how long do we wait for a maximal effect? Go ahead and type that into the chat. And if you don't know, that is okay. And if you guess wrong, that is also okay. Remember, this is the area where you're going to guess and check. On the Naplex, you definitely want to be prepared and get it right. All right, so I'm starting to get some answers. Good. We'll let everyone type. I'll continue and we'll come back to it. Non-inferiority trials are going to be new treatment is no worse or at least as good as current treatment. And so I have, and then we'll move on to the test characteristics. So I have 4 to 6 weeks, 4 to 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, and then 4 to 8 weeks. All of you are correct depending on the SSRI that we're talking about. Good job, everyone. Good. And once again, if you are unsure, you don't know, please make a note of it and go back and review. Suspicious bunch, welcome. I hope I've welcomed everybody. Excited that you're here. So now we have test characteristics. The first one is going to be bias, and this is influencing the results. There are many types of bias. A good example I have for you is observer bias. Let's say, for example, you purchase a new car like a Toyota Camry. When you're out on the road in your new Toyota Camry, you will notice a lot of Toyota Camrys because now that's what you're looking for. And there are several different types of bias, and selection bias is one that we'll discuss later, and that's a big one for drug trials. Basically, any type of bias can influence the results, and that can cause issues down the line. So we have blinded studies, single blind and double blind, and this is important. Single blind, the patient does not know which category they've been assigned to. They could be in a control group, or they could be in the placebo group, or they can be in a treatment group. Double blind means that whoever's conducting the study, or they also don't know. It has been randomized by someone else or software. And I think that's very important because you don't want, if you're evaluating as a pharmacist or the study director, if you're evaluating patients, you don't want your bias to go in. I would like, oh, this is a 9-year-old patient that has the rest of their life. Let me put them in the treatment group, kind of thing. Now, randomization, patients assigned to case group or control group, case group being the treatment group. You want to randomize your patients. Reliability. Can the test results be reproduced? Now, I actually have a non-pharma example. There was a Netflix documentary called Super Size Me. And if you're not familiar, basically this guy made a video of him eating McDonald's all the time. And this is recent information. And I don't think eating McDonald's for 30 days is healthy no matter what you order. Nothing straight for 30 days, aside from salad, which is not easy to do, even 3 days in a row, uh, is healthy. So don't think I'm voting for McDonald's. I'm definitely not voting for the guy who made this documentary. He made a documentary that after, excuse me, eating McDonald's for 30 days, he gained a bunch of weight and had a bunch of health issues. It's probably been 5 to 10 years since that movie came out, and no one has been able to reproduce those same results. It also came out that he had severe alcoholism and or struggled with alcohol dependence and had significant liver damage. That may have affected his results. In addition to the many, many calories, probably hundreds or 1,000 calories, he was intaking via liquid. So you want your study to be reliable and it stands up to the science that you're trying to prove. Next, we have validity, whether the test is accurate. So if you're testing, let's use the coronary artery disease example. If you're testing that your medication decreases total cholesterol, when you run your study, that's the result you should be able to measure. You don't want, oh, patients lost weight. That's an excellent side effect, and that's how we got Ozempic and Mounjaro. However, that that test becomes invalid if what you're trying to measure doesn't occur. Next, we have sensitivity. This measures how well a test identifies ill people. Specificity is how well a test rules out well people. Did I say that right? Sensitivity measures how well a test identifies ill people. Specificity is how well a test rules out well people. So, are we identifying the sick? Are we ruling out the healthy? And that's where the false positive and false negative comes into effect. A false negative is someone who is ill but is not identified, and a false positive is someone who is well and not. I switched it. Sorry. False negative is someone who is brain fart, sorry. False negative is someone who is ill but it's not detected, and a false positive is someone who is well but they are detected as ill. All right. Questions or concerns so far? Just hold them until the end. And yes, I will answer your question. Good question, Tara. Can I give an example of sensitivity and specificity? Yes, I can. And I'm actually going to pull up a pharma exam. Give me 1 second. All right. So sensitivity is going to be ruling out the disease. So a true positive are going to be ill people who the test has correctly identified as being ill. A false negative is going to be someone who is ill, but the test has incorrectly identified as being well. So let's take a strep test, for example. You swab the throat and you have the symptoms, it comes positive. That's going to be a true positive. A false negative is going to be you have strep, but the test comes back as negative. That's why sometimes you'll receive treatment or prescribe treatment because the symptoms fit as a bacterial pharyngitis. Good. Now, specificity is going to be ruling out well people without the disease. And so a positive result for a highly specific test is going to be confirmation. So if you have a false positive, that means the test is telling you that you're ill or you have the sickness or you have the condition, but you do not. Okay. All right. Very good. So our next slide is going to be relative risk, relative and absolute risk reduction, and NNT and NNH, which is number needed to treat and number needed to harm. Odds ratio, and HR is going to be hazard ratio. We use these tools to estimate the strength of correlation. So ARR is going to be absolute risk reduction. And this is the absolute difference between the event rates in two groups. So you have control group minus the treatment group. And relative risk is going to be the rate of event in the treatment group divided by the control group. And this is done at the end. And I'll explain what I mean by that. If you're doing a study, you want to know, was there some benefit for all the patients that we treated? So we do that for the relative risk, we'll do that at the end. Hazard ratio, I'll jump down to the last point. This can be calculated at any time of the study, and sometimes we'll use this metric to determine should we continue the study or not. Now, relative risk reduction is going to be 1 minus the relative risk, and this will give you a percentage. Number needed to treat and number needed to harm are going to be 1 over absolute risk reduction. And this is how many patients need to be treated for one patient to be harmed or one patient to benefit. Remember, number needed to treat is always rounded up, and number needed to harm is always rounded down. So, for example, if you have if you treat 100 patients and one of them improves, that's 1 over 100 for number needed to treat. If you harm two patients out of that 100, that's going to be number needed to harm. If you get a decimal in any of your calculations, that's what the rules are. If it's number needed to treat and you get 3.2, you'll round up to 4. And if you get 3.2 for number needed to harm, you'll round down to 3. And we err on the side of caution for number needed to harm. That's why we round down. Odds ratio is going to be the change in outcome occurring as a result of exposure in treated and not treated divided by not treated. So, treated divided by not treated divided by control with disease and control without disease. I wasn't able to represent the equation accurately, and I'll edit that later. If you get 1.0, that means there's no correlation. Greater than 1.0 means there's an increase, and less than 1.0 means there's a decrease. We talked about the hazard ratio. Next, we have the different types of data, and we have discrete data, which is going to be countable numbers with no decimals. Continuous data is going to be decimals are allowed, and there are infinite number of possible values, such as labs or drug concentration. Next, we have nominal or categorical data, and this is going to be data divided into different groups with event or no event. Ordinal or rank data is going to be certain order or ranking like pain scale or NYHA heart failure classification, and NYHA is the New York Heart Association. There, and the classifications are 1 through 4. Interval data is going to be measurable data with equal intervals, such as blood pressure 80 to 89, 90 to 99, 100 to 109. Ratio data has an absolute 0, and that will be like height, weight, hemoglobin, or A1C. All right. Now, I have 7, I believe, practice questions that we're going to do. And if you're new, I'm going to read the question and then you'll put your answer into the chat. If you're not sure, you can put a guess or you can put a question mark next to it and make sure you make a note to review. So, first, rate these in order from highest strength of evidence to lowest. This is going to be an ordered response type question. A is case study, B is RCT, C is going to be cohort study, and D is going to be case controlled study. And whenever you're ready, put your answers into the chat. Give everyone a second or a minute. All right. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 answers. So the correct answer is going to be B, C, D, A. And double-blind, randomized, control clinical trials have the highest strength, and then the single case study has the lowest strength. So cohort, there seems to be a little bit of confusion between cohort and case controlled study. Make sure you clarify the difference. All right, good job, everyone. Anyone have any questions or concerns? All right. And if you think of a question later, feel free to ask. All right, practice question 2. Which of the following study designs has the lowest statistical evidence behind it? A is going to be cohort study, B is going to be case control study, C is going to be RCT, and D is going to be case study. All right, Tara, you typed in F, but I assume that's D because it's right next to each other. Good. Good. All right, getting some answers. Remember which study design has the lowest statistical evidence behind it, and the answer is going to be D. So good job, everyone. Individual case studies are rated lowest on the strength of evidence scale, and RCTs are the strongest. Okay? And remember that it's hard to conduct randomized controlled trials with rare diseases because there's usually not enough patients to properly power the study. All right, good. We'll continue. The MedWatch program collects data from which of the following phases of clinical trials? All righty. So the correct answer here is going to be D. MedWatch collects information from post-marketing surveillance, So if you recall, we talked about phase 3 is the last phase of the study before a medication is approved and released to the market. So remember, MedWatch does post-marketing surveillance after the medication has been released to the public. Good job, everyone. Good job so far. Practice question 4. When a p-value is calculated in a clinical study, what is being determined? A. Probability of making a type 1 error. B. Probability of making a type 2 error. C. Probability that the difference observed is clinically significant. And D. Probability that the study is powered to detect statistical differences. All right, getting some answers. So this one is actually going to be A. When the p-value is less than 0.05, which is our threshold for statistical significance, type 1 error is detecting a difference when no difference exists. All right, a lot of range in the answers. So make sure you go back and review the different answer choices. Type 1 error, type 2 error. When we know that the difference is clinically significant and when it's statistical significance. Good job, Pacific Swells. Good job. All right, practice question 5. Choosing only patients with severely high blood pressure for a study on hypertension medication that will help you prove statistical significance is an example of A. Observational bias, B. Selection bias, C. Recall bias, and D. Interviewer bias. All right, getting a pretty good consensus on this one. The answer is B. This is you choosing the study candidates to get the result that you are looking for. All right. Practice question 6. And I think there's one more. Variables x and y have a correlation coefficient of negative 0.0024. What does this mean? Choice A, there is very little correlation. B, as x increases, y tends to increase as well. C, y is a dependent variable. D, an error was made in calculation. All right, getting some answers. And like Nikki just did, put a question mark by it. It is okay to guess. Give it another minute for another answer. All right. So this is going to be A. Correlation coefficient values range from +1 to -1. With this value being so close to 0, it means very little correlation. Good job, those of you that got it right. Good job on the guess, Nikki. And Tara, good job on the guess. Okay. Now we'll do practice question 7. With respect to clinical trials, which of the following is true? A. Sample size increases, power will increase as well. Bias most often increases the risk of type 2 error. Choice C. Intention to treat analysis considers all subjects who received at least one dose of the test intervention. Choice D. P-value threshold of 0.05 is generally used to determine clinical significance. Right? Getting some guesses. Excuse me. All right. So this is going to be A. The power to detect difference between two groups increases with group size. Type 2 error is not detecting a difference when there is one. And choice C considers all randomized subjects. And choice D is for statistical, not clinical significance. So good job if you chose A. KSC, good guess on this question. Now, this is the end of Biostats for today. Couple housekeeping. There is a survey. Please fill it out. We appreciate your feedback. Anything we can do to improve your experience is better. Shout out to Suspicious Bunch and Pharma Turtles for setting this up. If you have taken the Naplex already and you have a score report, you can send me a message. I'd be happy to look at it and discuss it with you. If you have taken an assessment, same thing. Happy to discuss that with you. If you are interested in tutoring, reach out. I am happy to discuss next week or a session whenever it is convenient to you. Does anyone have any questions about or concerns about biostats today, or the Naplex in general, or the MPJE? You're welcome, everyone. You're welcome. All right.